Hello and welcome back to the OTB channel. So the summer has more or less passed, my break is more or less over, and it's time to get back to producing content. Not necessarily weekly, but on a more regular basis. And I'm going to start today by looking at a Slackware derivative called Salix Os. See you after the intro. Okay, welcome back. I've just realised looking at myself in the camera that I forgot my hat, so I'm afraid you're going to get the bald head today. Never mind. So I want to look at Salix today. I don't know if it's pronounced Salix or Salix. I'll probably swap and change between the two. But a few people after my Slackware series have asked if I could look at some Slackware derivatives. And Salix is one of the ones that I've wanted to look at. And there's another one called Slint. Slint is still at the release candidate stage. So I thought, well, let's have a look at Salix because that's been released, version 15. And it does really stand out, perhaps amongst other derivatives, because it makes claims that it completely resolves the issue of dependencies. So let's go over to its website and see what it's all about. So here we are at salix.org, the Distro's website. Not one of its most impressive features, I have to say, but does the job basically. So what is it telling us here? It's telling us that it's a GNU Linux distribution, that it's based on Slackware, fast, easy to use, stability is what its goal's all about. Interestingly, it's fully backwards compatible with Slackware, so that means that in a standard Slackware installation, you could use Salix packages and vice versa. It benefits from its own repositories, and looking down here, the key thing is high quality package repositories with dependency support. Now, this is important. They not only build dependency support into their own packages, but they've also added dependency support to the standard Slackware repo that it draws upon. So fully localized, 32 and 64-bit alternatives, and essentially you have the option here of doing a full, basic, or a core install. What I really like about this, though, is you do have a link here to essentially a manual, which takes you all the way through how to partition, what's required, how to do package management within Salix or Salix, all the way through to some basic Linux commands. So, okay, you get a general impression that it's using Slackware, that it's trying to make the package management simpler. It's not a full Slackware install, it's vastly cut down, but ultimately that shouldn't be a problem. And it does make reference to some specific tools that are in the distro that are unique to Salix. What I would say is you'll see anybody who takes note of the date and time on my desktop as it gets shown on this video will see that the date and time changes over a few days. That's because I started off installing this, I had a quick look at it, and then I thought, right, it's not fair to just do a quick glance at this. I want to have a play with it. So I actually had a play with it over 24 hours or so to see what it was made of. And here's a spoiler, I've come away quite impressed. So without further ado, let's get on, let's have a look. Right, so I've just booted the Salix ISO, and I'm just at the screen. I've booted it in EUFI mode. I'm just capturing the mouse, just bear with me. And you can see we're presented initially with a range of different languages, which is all good. So let me choose English, Great Britain, and see what happens. I believe this is actually based on the Slackware installer, so I'm not expecting to see anything too different, but I think it's modified in a couple of ways. So standard thing here, you can type setup to start the installation, but it does expect you to do your partitioning to start off with. So let me open up CFdisk and set GPT. I'm just going to do a really basic partitioning scheme here for a UFI setup. So I'm going to start off and I'm just going to do a 500 meg partition, which I'm going to set to type, where are we? EFI system. I believe, like Slackware, it's going to mount the EFI partition on boot EFI, so that should be more than enough. As for the rest, I'm just going to do one single partition. It's already set to Linux file system, so let me just write that out. Am I sure? Yes, I am. Okay, so let's quit. I can check that those partitions are created now. And yes, SDA1 is the EFI system and SDA2 is the Linux file system. So next step, I'm just going to type setup and see where we get to. What do I want to do? Keep the current key map or select another key map? The current key map is uk.map. Great. So by setting the language right at the beginning, it's automatically set the key map. And what do I want to do now? Install Salix using a step-by-step guide. Okay. So, welcome to the Salix partition editor. I presume it's Salix and not Salix. So I'm going to call it Salix throughout here. So select a disk and select Go to start partitioning. If you don't want to alter the partition layout, select Exit. I'm going to select Exit here because I've already done the partitioning. You've not created a swap partition. Do you want to continue without installing one? Yes, please. Please select the root partition. It is dev SDA2. And I want to format it. And I want to format it ext4. I'm afraid I've not moved over to Btrfs yet. Adding that information to fstab. Sounds good. It's found the EFI system partition. That's all good. It's formatting it as FAT32. And it's been added to fstab. So where do I want to install from? Well, I've got an ISO attached to VirtualBox, so install from a Salix CD or DVD. And scan, and hopefully it should find it. And it has found it. And I now get the option to install either a full install with everything, a basic install, which is a minimal graphical environment on a web browser, or core, which only installs a console system. I'm going to go for full, install everything. And it's looking very much like a normal Slackware install at the moment, so we'll come back once this is finished. Right, so that didn't take long, about as long as a standard Slackware installation takes. Thinking about, I paused it while it was just finishing off. Thinking about the partitioning screen that kind of cropped up, where I had to exit out of it to get it to accept my existing partitions, it looked to me like perhaps you didn't have to create the partitions before the installation, that there would have been a dialog to actually allow you to create what you wanted to create as part of the installation, which is quite good. So we're at the bootloader installation, and skip installing Lilo and proceed to eLilo is what we want. This is a UEFI installation, so Lilo on its own won't work. So I'm going to proceed to eLilo, and Let me just make sure I've captured the mouse here. And what do we want to do? Install a bootloader entry. Yes. Hardware clock set to local time. Yes, that'll do. And choose our time zone. One of the things that I would quite like to see, as you probably know, anybody who's watched my Slackware videos, is I tend to install grub, and I chroot into the system after the installation is finished. Okay, the locale is English. I'd quite like to see the option to install grub from a menu within a Slackware installer. I'm sure that you can still install grub the normal way that I do it, but hey, you know, it's not a biggie. I've never used Elilo, so we'll see if it works. Right, do we want to have numlock enabled? Yeah, enabled, why not? And I'm now going to be presented with some dialogue so I can create one or more user accounts. Right, so this is slightly different to what we would normally get. You would normally have to do this on first boot. So I'm going to create a new account. So let's say OTB. I'm going to enter a password. And again, I believe the root account is disabled by default. So I'm probably going to re-enable that once I go in. So what else do we need to do? I think that's probably everything we need to do. Yeah, I think it is. So let's go to exit user setup. What about our preferred repository? Well, slackware.uk is good for me. And reboot now. So I'm going to reboot. I'm going to have a look and set the resolution and everything else that I need to do. Then we'll come back and we'll have a look at the install system. So here we are at the desktop of Salix Os. Needless to say, it booted fine. It took me straight to a very smart light DM screen where I was able to log in, and here is the default configuration. It looks very clean to me. I even like the desktop wallpaper here, and I'm sure there's other options. Let's have a look. Yeah, we seem to go beyond the standard XFCE options, which is always good. And I know some of you are always going to ask, what is the RAM usage? Well, it's showing up currently as 418 megs, which is pretty lightweight even for XFCE. So, all good. So, we've got all the normal stuff that you'd expect to see. You've got your waste bin, your file system, your home directory, and you've got a link to the Salix Os website where you can pick up the manual under the startup guide. So that's great. You've even got a link to IRC there. I always find it a little bit surprising to see links to IRC because it's not something, I'll be honest, that I've ever really used. But hey, fill your boots. It's there if you want it. Now, I'll be honest, I've had a little bit of a play with this so I could see what was around before kind of going through it with yourselves. And I will point out what I've installed as extra applications because I've been playing around with the package management and also with some slackbuilds. But let's just go through the menu and I'll point out what we get as standard. PCman FM that is not standard. I've installed that. What you get as standard is the Thunar file manager. Everything else is pretty much what you'd expect. The same in development. You get Genie, you get Icon Browser, and you get Meld. I don't think that I've installed anything there in particular. I think everything else is pretty much as it was. If we go to graphics, you get the GIMP, LibreOffice Draw, and Ristretto. I have installed Inkscape because it was a dependency for the Arc theme from slackbuilds. So that doesn't come as standard, but it is already in the Salix repositories anyway, so it made the whole thing very easy. We've got Firefox and transmission there, much as you'd expect. Clause mail, a little bit of a strange option for email, I suppose. But hey, why not? And you've also got Pigeon. Multimedia, you've got Exhale, Parole, the Pulse Audio volume control, and you do have a link also to install Multimedia Codecs. Now, I've just done this a minute or so ago, so it shouldn't really come up with anything. But it's a nice little GUI that will just check if absolutely everything that's available is installed on the system. And as you can see there, all codec packages are already installed. It just took a couple of minutes when I did that. It ships only with free packages, but I like the fact that it's got an easy way to kind of bring in non-free packages as soon as you want. It does ship with LibreOffice, which of course even Slackware doesn't. And then you've got your standard settings, which you would expect to see. And you've also got some special entries here. I have installed Alacrity myself, but you've got a .new GUI here, which allows you to decide what you're going to do with new configuration files when new packages come down. I mean, Slack package would normally let you know and ask you what you wanted to do, but it's asking what you want to do. Do you want to replace it, delete it, merge it? All handy to have to manage your system. What else have we got? We've got a link to FlatHub. We'll have a look at that after. And something called GUEFI, which is, I believe, a GUI for Efi Boot Manager, which it is. So you can add entries, you can move them around, change the boot order. Pretty good. Okay, let's just come out of there. What else have you got in the specialized tools? You've got the gslapt package manager. I'm going to talk about package management after. You've got a GUI to configure system host names. You've got htop there, which you've already seen. You've got another GUI here on top of the standard XFCE settings where you can configure your keyboard. So that's all useful. Not quite sure why you need a second one. You've got LightDM GTK plus greeter settings, your cups printing interface, a system to rebuild the icon cache, select your repository mirror, the system clock, system language, and system services. A few people have asked me about coming over to Slackware. It's not systemd, so how do you manage your services? Well, essentially, your services are all started, stopped, and restarted from bash scripts in the etc rcd directory. This is a nice little GUI that just allows you to do it graphically. So, all good. I like that. It just adds that little bit extra. What else have we got here? You've got users and groups, so you've got a dialogue for that. And that seems to be pretty much it. So, it's a good-looking system. It's very clean, and it comes with some additional tools. What I am going to do is just change over the appearance, because I'm really sorry. I absolutely hate this light appearance. Now, you'll see the Arc theme there. I've installed that separately, so that's not going to come by default. You're going to get everything that isn't Arc there. So I'm going to change to the Salix Dark theme. Icons, we'll stick with what's there. And I'm going to have to go to the Window Manager theme to actually change this title bar. It's on Salix at the moment. Obviously, I've now got all the Arc stuff there, but I'm going to just change to the default. So I now should have a nice dark look. I really wish that dark themes would come as defaults. I find them so much nicer to look at. But hey, each to his own. So, you pretty much know what you're going to see in the control panel. So you've got a decent XFCE desktop. But here's the thing, why would you use this? Well, I think you'd use Salix OS if you want to use a Slackware system, but you're not comfortable with Slackware's approach to dependency management. Now, personally, I'm very comfortable with Slackware's approach to dependency management, but looking at the comments I've had on my videos, I know that many of you aren't. So let's start to take it apart and look at how Salix does it. Okay, so package management is what really sets Salix apart. On a standard Slackware system, there is no dependency management in the main repo, none at all. There's also no dependency management as such when you're using slackbuilds. But as you're already aware, there are various tools that you can use that assist you with that. But Slackware itself has no dependency management, and as long as you've done a full install, it's not necessary because Patrick has made sure that all dependencies are resolved. And this, in a nutshell, is why everybody who uses Slackware and runs a Slackware video tries to encourage people to do a full install. If you haven't done a full install and then you start to kind of add or take away things from the main repositories, you can never be fully sure that the dependencies are resolved. And clearly Salix is not a full version of Slackware. It comes with XFCE, but it doesn't come with KDE, Plasma, and all the various window managers installed. So how does it counter that problem? Well, let me first of all open up the Salix online startup guide, and before we go there, I just want to go to slackware.uk, if I can spell correctly. And here we go. So, if I went on the slackware.uk website, as you can see here, and I just go straight to Slackware, and I open up the current Slackware 6415, you will see that right in the root directory here, there is a file called packages.txt, which gives you a description. It's like a database in a way of every single package that's included. You get the name, the location, the size, and a brief description. No dependency information whatsoever is included there. However, if I was now to go to Salix, and let me just work my way through to 15, and I go through to packages.txt, you will notice a difference in the packages.txt. Here, the packages have extra entries in them. We have packages required, package conflicts, and package suggests. And where there are dependencies, it will be mentioned. So if you look here at clutter, packages required, all of those things. So Salix in its own repository has actually added to the standard package.txt or packages.txt by adding dependency information. More than that, though, they also have a link here to the standard Slackware 15 repositories, all within that Salix folder. And if I open up packages.txt again, you will see that the entries here also have the packages required, packages conflict, package suggests information. In fact, what they've done is they've added dependency information to the standard Slackware packages. Now, what that allows you to do is it allows you to use package managers such as the one that Salix uses called gslapt, which, although they don't manage dependencies on their own, if there is dependency information within the packages.txt file, it will look at them and install dependencies as required. Now, I've used slapget in the past, and it's a decent enough program. Works a little bit like Debian's apt-get, and it has a graphical interface called gslapt, which looks a little bit like the Synaptic Package Manager. And it works fine if you've done a full install. But just using a standard Slackware mirror, it's not going to be able to do dependency management. So it's only when a distro maintainer has added in that information that slapget really starts to take on a life of its own. And let's just open up a terminal here. So if I was, for instance, to, I don't know, try and use slapget to install a package, let's install Rofi, for instance. Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to update the slapget repository, and I do that by hitting sudo slapget-u. It asks me for my password because I'm using sudo. And you can see it's just like an apt-get update. It's built the updated package cache. If I want to install something now, I do slapget-i, and let me think, how about Rofi? Salix actually contains loads of other packages in its repository that are not part of your standard Slackware selection. So what I've found looking through this is the majority of packages that I would normally use slackbuilds for are actually already there within Salix. So sudo slapget Rofi, so it's building its package list, and you can see here that it actually says the following new package will be installed: xcbutil cursor, xcbutil xrm, along with Rofi. So it has indeed installed some dependencies along with that. So all nice and straightforward. You don't have to use the command line though. You can use a package manager that they have here called gslapt, which, as I've said before, is a little bit like Synaptic. We'll just wait for that to open. And here we go. In fact, its interface even looks really similar to Synaptic. And it's pretty straightforward. You update the package cache by hitting update there. And it's going off onto the internet to make sure everything's up to date. If I wanted to then upgrade the system, I simply hit mark all upgrades and execute. And what's going to happen, one is going to be installed, Python LXML. Okay, so I'm just going to hit that, and it's installing it, and job done. I could, of course, search up here for an individual package to install, and then install it simply by right-clicking, marking it as install, and hitting execute. Now, slapget works really well if the dependency information is available. And this is what sets Salix apart from other Slackware systems. It is. So it makes package management as simple as using Ubuntu or Debian or Fedora. It is all there for you. What you also have on top of slapget, and there's quite a few packages in there, I've only had to go out to slackbuilds for a couple of different ones. most packages can kind of be installed via slapget. You also, I noticed, have a link to FlatHub. So I'm going to click on that, and let's find a package here. I think the one that most people probably want to install before they ever start is FlatSeal, which will obviously allow you to manipulate the permissions on flatpaks. And in order to install it, I'll just hit install. Click on the download, and there you go. It is now installing. And there you go. I just paused that for a minute, but the Flatpak installation was successful. And if I search in my menu for FlatSeal, you can see it there, number 2. So, in a nutshell then, you've got the standard Slackware repositories with dependency information included. So if you want to install any additional packages from the Slackware repos, you can do so using slapget. You've got the Salix repositories, which contain lots of additional packages that are not in the standard Slackware repos. So, for example, I found Alacrity was already there. Rofi is already there. PCman FM is already there. All the sort of packages that I would normally use, slackbuilds for, were already there. So I wouldn't actually have much of a need to go off and install SBO tools. If I did need to use slackbuilds repo, though, there is a command line variant of slapget actually installed on Salix called slapt src, which works on a similar sort of principle to SBO tools, in that if the dependency management is there for it to look at, it will use that information. Unfortunately, this is where we get to a problem. Because this isn't a full install, if there are dependencies missing that are part of a standard full Slackware installation, slapt src and even SBO tools won't find them. So, for instance, I had a go at doing my normal installing of Alacrity via a Slack build, and it failed to build using both slapt src and SBO tools because Rust isn't actually installed by default in Salix. When I installed Rust using the repositories, everything was fine, it built. One thing to perhaps mention, though, and it was a little bit of an anomaly that I think is worth pointing out, is if I go to the etc directory and I go to the slapget directory, you'll see two configuration files here. slapget.rc for slapget and slapget src.rc. And if I open the slapt src.rc for slapt src, this is the one that'll compile a Slack build for you, it comes pre-configured with two sources. I found with those sources, it didn't seem to be able to see any Slack builds. I had to add a standard Slack build source to get it to see the Slack builds tree. Once I'd done that, though, it was fine. To be honest, though, if you're going to use Salix, if you combine, the Slackware repo, the Salix repo, and flatpaks, you're going to have very few instances where you are going to need to rely on Slack builds. If you do have your own packages, though, and you do install the odd Slack build, what you will need to do is to blacklist those packages to make sure, if they also exist in the Slackware or Slack build repos, that they don't get overwritten when you upgrade. And if you go into gslapt and the preferences, you'll find there's a tab there called excludes. And these are all the packages that are excluded from upgrades and being overwritten. And you'll see I've used the standard black list format for slackbuilds and OTB packages to make sure that it doesn't try and overwrite my packages or any of my slackbuilds. I've noticed here that we also seem to have all kernel packages blacklisted at the moment, so I'm interpreting from that kernel upgrades will not happen, unless you explicitly enable them. So, in a nutshell, that is Salix. It does come with package tools, which is the install package, upgrade package, remove package stuff. It also has an extra utility on its own, which is called, let me have a look, see if I can find it, S package, which you can use to install downloaded packages, just like you would use package tools, install package. I believe it's written in C and it's claimed it's much faster. I've played around with it. It seems to work fine. But whereas that exists alongside package tools, slapt-get takes over completely from Slack package. Slack package is not on this system. But having said that, it's not required because of the way that Salix repositories are structured. Right, I think that's enough talking from me. Let's go and have a quick chat. Right, so that's Salix. I like it. I've spent a day or two having a look at it and playing with the package management, and slapt-get works really well with Salix because of the way that it includes the dependency information within its repo. I've used slapt-get before. As I said, I wasn't particularly blown away with it before, but not the fault of slapt-get. That was because the repos I was using it with didn't have the dependency information within them. But it really suits Salix, and I can understand why they don't include Slack package in the distro, because it would possibly conflict and tend to remove some of the Salix packages if it was put in the hands of somebody who didn't necessarily know what they were doing. So who's Salix for? Well, they say it's Slackware for the lazy slacker, Salix themselves. And I'd sort of agree that certainly there is that market there. If you like Slackware, you like the stability of the system, but you don't want to get involved in how to manage dependencies, or you don't want to do that full install right from word go, it might be the distro for you. For somebody brand new to Slackware, I know from all the comments that I had on my Slackware videos that this issue of dependency management, which I'll reiterate really isn't an issue once you get used to the system, causes a great deal of concern. I think it may well be a good entry into the world of Slackware, and certainly it's one of the best entries that I've seen. It seems to be really solid, really well put together, and I think the Salix developers have done a stunning job. So that's all I've got to say for today, guys. Thank you to all my patrons who are still hanging on. As you know, I've still suspended all your payments at the moment because I'm not fully up and running yet, although you will start to see, more videos starting to come through. But I appreciate your support anyway. And if I could just ask everybody else, if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and do the normal stuff. That's it for today, and I'll see you when I see you. Cheers, everyone.